What is up, YouTube? It's Aaron back here with On the Bubble Podcast. We are here with the usual cast of characters, myself, Logan, and Rahan. How are you doing today, boys?
Doing well.
Good.
Alrighty, so today we are going to do a dude set review. We've got it kind of broken down based on archetypes, and then towards the end, some more generic, really good support. And then we'll kind of observe how it has impacted the OCG, and then kind of how the tournaments have played out, having gotten the new set. Obviously, we don't have the confirmed set list, so we're just going to do what the cards that we were most expected. No imports or anything like that, so only what's confirmed and what we expect to kind of be in the set. So, first of all, we're going to start off with the Justice Hunters decks and the new support that they've got. Logan, you have done the most testing out of us recently with this, so please give us the rundown.
Yeah, for sure. So out of Doom and Dimensions, we're going to get 2 new support cards for all 3 archetypes. 2 Yummy cards, 2 Draco Tail cards, 2 Canine cards. If you guys want, we can start with the Canines. First up, we have Canine 04 Noroi. This is a card I talked about on my channel. Basically what it is when it's normal summoned, you can special summon a non-machine Canine from your deck. And then the monster that you summon, well, it's on the field, you're locked into Canines, so as long as you overlay that for Ripper or something, then you'll be unlocked. And then kind of its bonus effect, which isn't really a bonus effect, is a really good effect. You can send a face-up Canine card you control to the grave and look at your opponent's hand. So this has really good synergy with Case of Canine, because that card is going to be stuck on your field all the time. You get to peek at your opponent's hand and all your combos. And I'll go into like some of the combos we can do with this card, but let's read the next card here, the Canine Jax. This is just kind of a utility card. Pretty much all it does is when your opponent activates an effect in the hand or grave, it's a trigger effect, or I guess is it ignition effect? Yeah, detach one material from this card, target a monster in the field, and destroy it. This is just straight up just a utility card. There's not like any combo with this. You don't really make this on your M board. I don't know if there's any specific reason to be playing this card. I see the OCG playing this card a lot. It is a canine name, so I guess it makes it so you can go into it with the Noroi and unlock yourself if you already have a Ripper on the field. Is there anything you guys see with this card that I'm missing?
I assume if you're playing like a heavier canine package, you like go Jax into Werewolf and try and do some OTKs with it because it doubles the damage if it's under a canine XYZ.
Okay.
But in terms of just it as a utility rank 5, it seems kind of low.
Yeah. Okay.
All I see is in terms of lore, I think this is based off of Jack the Ripper, which was a serial killer from England.
Shout out history.
I've never thought about the lore of Yu-Gi-Oh! Once in my life.
Jack's the Ripper? Makes sense.
Anyways, let's talk about the broken card here, or the better card of these two, the Noroi. So essentially what you're going to be doing with this card is off of your Jokel, you're going to search this guy, and then you'll get a Ripper up early, or you can search this off a Ripper, however you want to do it. You'll normal summon this, and essentially what you're going to try to do is you're going to leave up the 4 bodies, and your 5th summon will be the Ripper that you overlay with the guy that you summon off the Noroi. So 5th summon Ripper, and then you're going to turn all your bodies into Saryuja, and you're going to try to turn Noroi or Ripper plus a level 5 into whatever engine you're playing. So if you're playing Vanquish Soul, you're going to turn Noroi into Vanquish Soul combos. If you're playing Solfachord, you're going to turn it into Solfachord combos. I'm sure there's a plethora of other decks that can also accomplish that with this card. And while doing this, you get to look at your opponent's hand. So I think this is going to be a fantastic card. It's going to be a one of in pretty much every canine deck. And I think in some of the more canine heavy decks, it could be a multiple, like 2 or 3 of. And is there anything you guys want to add to that?
No, yeah, I think it's not bad. Obviously in a deck like Vanquish Soul, it kind of conflicts a little bit because your deck's pretty normal summon heavy. Like you put out on your channel, you can make Saryuja with and leave up the Ripper now, and previously you had to use the Ripper as a part of the Saryuja line. I think it's a big benefit. The ability to look at your opponent's hand is kind of neat, but because it doesn't actually rip a card, it's not impactful. It may give you some knowledge if your opponents aren't breakers. Okay, I now do things a little bit different, but on average, it just seems like a nice utility piece. Maybe it makes some of the other rank 5 decks a little bit better, but in terms of its impact on the most played canine deck, which is Vanquish, so I'm not sure how impactful it is.
I do think looking at your opponent's hand matters a little bit for Noroi, because you can, if your opponent was holding an imperm for your Saryuja, you're able to look at that, and then you can pivot your M board to something else if you see the imperm, or a Dominus Purge.
But if you need go to Saruja anyways, and like that's your way to get into VS cards. Like it doesn't actually interact with the Emperor, which is I think the downside. But I think the fact that it's just like a free set and makes use of like Case of K9 being up, I think gives it some value. I think the place that this card is actually like at its best is probably Crystron K9 because like that deck is more like negate focused. So just knowing full information for your opponent's hand minus the sixth card, knowing what to negate, I think makes like a huge difference because your opponent can't just like bait you. And I think this is probably like where that second effect is at its most beneficial.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. From my experience, the look at your opponent's hand is pretty relevant for the imperm, especially when you open Jokel, because they don't. If you open Jokel in a 5, they don't really have a time to imperm you until the Saryuja. So once you see that imperm, then you usually pivot and you make like IP plus a rank 5 plus Ripper plus quick play spell, or what you might not even be playing the quick play spell. You can make 2 rank 5s, whatever you want to make. But I do think the look at your opponent's hand is like more relevant than people may give it credit for.
I mean, it's effectively free because of Case, right? And obviously you can search that off of Lantern.
Yeah, totally free.
Yeah, so like it may be like a little strange. It depends on how you start, obviously, because I guess if you like always Noroi into Lantern, you can always like Lantern add Case and then send Case before you get the Noroi off, because like the lock could matter. Like you need to kind of get the Noroi off the field quickly into the Ripper. Because if you don't make the Ripper with it, you're still locked. But yeah, otherwise, obviously, like a pretty good card. It seems like a one of. It may make a deck like a pure K9 deck. Maybe like K9 Fiendsmith. Like it makes those decks a little bit better because you're not kind of required to open like Jokel +5. Like now you can just either open Case or Noroi in addition to all of those plays. So I think it makes something like that a little more viable. But and then obviously Crystron, it being a machine, helps. Like there's lines with Platinum Gadget now where you can still get the Scrabber Cycle out of hand. So I think the card's obviously very strong. Yeah, I mean it's a nice piece.
Yep.
Like it matters for the engine and see how it impacts the meta.
Okay, let's look at the Draco Tail cards up next.
Yeah.
Okay, so first off, this is Draco Tail. I don't. What is this? Phyrexial? Phyrexial? If it's normal special summon, you target a Draco Tail monster in your graveyard, except itself, special summon it, then return one monster you control to the hand. And then if it's sent to the graveyard, it has a Draco Tail effect. You can set a spell trap. So from my understanding with this card, essentially what you're going to be trying to do with it is you're going to use it to just get back like your Pan or your Urgula and get it back to your hand to end on. From what I've seen, this is generally a one of because it's not a starter. It's not necessarily an extender. It's a card that can kind of add to your M board. It's also a spellcaster, so I believe you can go into the Blue Eyes Link one with it. Rehan, you're more of the Draco Tail expert lately. Do you see any other use cases for this card? Because it does not seem fantastic to me.
So if you look at like its effect in a vacuum, I agree. It's not fantastic when we're looking at the applications of cards like Naroi and Marshmallow. But like you said, it has its purpose, and I think one of the biggest issues that I've experienced with Draco Tail, is that it struggles to actually grind with VSK9. So both decks have good grind games, but the fact that VSK9 can just like continue recycle their cards back to hand with a card like Rock or just bouncing those cards back mean that your only actual way to continue grinding is Arthalion's effect to add cards back to the hand or getting advantage with your traps. Now, the issue in that matchup is the fact that one of two traps isn't always live because of how low of a spell count VSK9 has. So Flame is really sometimes difficult to actually get off, meaning that your grind game is kind of affected from that perspective. It's also really easy to actually get rid of Flame before Flame has a chance to activate in that matchup as well. So Phyrexial being able to add back cards like Pan, Urgula itself back to hand as well means, like, for example, if you normal summon a Phyrexial, you can get a Balulu back on the field, adds Phyrexial back to hand, and now you're good to go in immediate play. It being another name as well means that you have more opportunities to actually get more cards in rotation as well. And I guess we'll move on to the trap in a bit as well, but then you get more access to the trap more readily. And you very rarely actually run out of ways to actually get more cards in rotation. So when we're looking at it from a vacuum, I agree it's not a great card, but when we're looking at it as a puzzle piece for the Draco Tail deck as a whole, I think it provides definite value, and I can see myself playing at least one of it.
One other, before we move to the trap, one thing I've also seen in the OCG is that it's a light, so it allows you to make Shoutout Construct with Shoutout Fusion, I believe. So I don't know how relevant that'll actually be, but Yeah, I do think this is just going to be kind of more of a utility card, which is kind of the theme with all of these support cards that we got. None of them are really like game breaking or like significantly improving the deck. They're just fixing kind of the minor flaws that the decks have, which I kind of like. I like the direction they're going with that.
I very much agree.
All right, let's talk about the trap card. So Draco Tail trap, they get a third one. Target a monster and or one spell or trap in your opponent's graveyard. Oh, I didn't even realize that this can target two. Target one monster and or one spell or trap. Okay, that's cool. Banish them, then you can place one Draco Tail card from your graveyard or banishment to the bottom deck, draw a card. So obviously the worst trap of the three in terms of interruption level or power level over the interruption. However, it is just another trap and it is a card that draws you a card and it's searchable. So I don't think there's a lot to talk about with this card. I think they'll probably end up playing it just as a third card to set. Yeah, it's not a great interruption against any of the decks right now. It's all right against Yummy. You can banish their minion, but with Marshmallow, we'll be able to see that they can actually get it back now. Rihan, do you have anything else to say about this?
I think one unique piece is that this is probably like the hardest of the three traps to actually interact with. And you're able to get its effect to draw off more readily. Because like for example, Flame, you could like send with droplets. You can put your cards in defense to play around Horn, but it's like how do you actually play around Sting? Because Sting will always be there. So I
True.
think from that perspective, Sting is cool. The other aspect is now that you have a third name, a trap in rotation that adds to your grind game. It's a bit more difficult to actually cut off a Draco Tail from like the recursion, whereas right now you only have two traps. The third thing is I've found myself multiple times setting like one of the spells, like turn one or even like turn three when playing into a board, just setting extra spells to get value off of like my Draco Tail names. But now that you have a card that provides like some sort of interruption sometimes, but more importantly draws you a card, means that some of your more redundant effects or redundant hands allow you to diversify the number of cards that you actually end up playing with across two turns.
Yeah, I think this will definitely be an improvement to the deck. However, I do think both of these Draco Tail cards are weaker than the support that the K9 cards and the Yummy cards got. Speaking of Yummy, do you guys want to move on to Yummy now?
Do it.
Okay. This card is called Yum Yum Yummies. Very long effect. Basically, each time two or more Yummies are special summoned, you gain 500 life points and your opponent pays 500. People were playing this in the OCG at one point, I believe, as a time card. However, in the TCG, that is not relevant anymore. Second effect is you can pay 500, target two face-up monsters on the field, including a Snatchy. Send both to the graveyard, and if you do special summon a Yummy Synchro, and it's treated as a Synchro summon. So for this effect, you don't have to have the proper materials. Like, if your opponent has, I don't know, a detonator, I guess detonator is not a good example, but like a Baguska on the field or something, you can send the Baguska to the grave and synchro summon for a Yummy, which is kind of cool. However, it's just a go second card and it's like it's continuous spell. It's really easy to interact with, so that effect is not great. What I would consider the more relevant effect is if your opponent activates a card or effect, you can pay 100 and immediately link summon one Yummy link, and that can be used on your opponent's turn. And the reason this is relevant is, let's say you make your normal board of like link one, two level ones, and like a Herald, which is kind of the normal board that you'll be getting to under the with Marshmallow, or you'll get to like a Synchro, a link one, a level one, and the Herald. If your opponent Dark Rulers you, you can use this basically and get a Snatchy out afterwards. Obviously, I think you'd have to use this at the next card they activate, otherwise your guy come out negated. But it's a way to play around Dark Ruler. However, it is somewhat difficult to set up because you don't ever really want to search this instead of Surprise. But with the next card, we're going to go over Marshmallow. There's some techniques you can use to actually get this on the field in your turn one combos with like Starham and stuff. So I think this is like at the very best a side deck card to counter exactly like Dark Ruler and Droplets. I don't think it's a great utility card. I think it's only a counter to those, and it's not even exactly searchable. It's not the easiest way to, not super easy to get to it. Is there anything else I'm missing with this card that you guys see?
No, I think you kind of identified the use cases for it pretty well. It's like a going first card into breakers. That's like an engine.
Yeah, I agree.
Is it good enough? Maybe, probably not. I don't really anticipate it seeing too much play.
Definitely not in the main deck. There's like no way this card sees main deck play.
It just straight dead.
And then let's talk about the broken card, the Marshmallow Yummy. So pretty different from the other main deck Yummies actually. So if you control no monsters or you only control light beast monsters, which is pretty important because I saw a lot of people early on in the format trying to do combos where they put up a early Herald and then special summon this to play around like Azuna. You can't do that because Herald's obviously not a light beast. But so yeah, no monsters or light beasts. You can special summon it from your hand, which activates, which can trigger Azuna. If it's normal special summon, you can add a Yummy spell trap from your graveyard to your hand. Or if it was special summoned by the effect of a synchro, you can place one Yummy field spell or continuous spell from your deck or banishment face up on your field. So this is important because you finally have a way to get minion back in rotation if they banish it. This is also important because it says continuous spells. So on your turn one combos, you can actually set it up to where you go Starham instead of Marcher turn one and special back the Marshmallow, and then the Marshmallow can place the new continuous spell. How good that is, I don't really know because you're using a discard in your combo now to get the Yummy Yumsman or whatever it was called, Yummy Yummies up. Which I don't think is exactly that great, but it is a way to play around board breakers in theory post side. Um, from my testing, the new Yummy combos aren't that different from the old Yummy combos. Usually, all that really changes is either you get to save a discard because you'll discard the Marshmallow and just revive with Surprise, and then Surprise will get added back to your hand. So a lot of your combos, they don't necessarily require a discard. Or what will happen is instead of having Link 1 level 1 Herald, you'll have Link 1 level 1 Herald and a Synchro on your board, which is slightly better into like Droplet and such. But the big thing with this card is it gives you incredible grind game. You only have to play one Surprise. You can basically infinitely recycle Surprise. You can infinitely recycle your field spells. And it just gives you more Yummy names and more extenders when your normal summon gets stopped. So I this is going to be an auto 3 of. I think it's a fantastic card. I think it's a very I really like the power level of this card where it doesn't really make your M board a lot better, just makes it safer, and it makes your combos a little bit safer. Anything else from you guys on this one?
Oh, no.
What I thought was really cool was something that was brought up earlier with Aaron and Cormac's discussion. Oops, shout out. But it was like the fact that the OCG at least, and I guess we can go into like lists later on, was
Mhm.
OCG dropping like the striker package in favor of Marshmallow just because of the confliction. And I thought that was actually pretty interesting when it comes to like deck development, just because like this is technically an extender, but also a consistency piece. And it plays less into Fua than something like the Striker engine would have. So I thought like that was a neat piece of like deck development. But I think the sentiment that you echoed was that it's really cool how like all of these Justice Hunter pieces like do incorporate into the Justice Hunter's decks, but not in a way that like it propels one deck to being like immensely superior than what it was right now.
Yeah, it's just fixing a lot of the basically
Mhm.
like plugging the leaks of the deck, basically fixing the cracks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this card is fantastic.
Yeah, it's good. The one thing that I will say about the Sky Striker thing is I think one thing we overlooked was like obviously Striker is just like substantially worse than Maxi. So the OCG was doing like pure ice map and whatever's like maxing out on names. Because if
Hmm.
you start Hornet Drones to get Maxi, like you're just kind of screwed. So I think in the TCG, like we're probably still playing Striker card just because like the cost is so low. And Marshmallow is like a normal summon is still fine. Like you don't really like have to do special summoning from him. But yeah, like you said, like it fixes some of the not the consistency, but like it gives you like more main deck space, like playing less surprise. Your lose con of like losing your minion is like gone now, so definitely fixes a lot of the obvious problems that the deck had. So the deck just gets
Some
a little bit safer, not really like better. I guess is the word to describe it.
Yeah, and the grind game is just much better now too. Something I do want to say about the striker cards is playing the Yummy deck a lot recently. I've also just kind of noticed that like there there's a lot of hands where you just only open the striker cards, and they're so weak into Purge and Ash, where you would just much rather have a normal summon Yummy in those hands. So I think there's a lot of things going against Engage, and obviously in the TCG we don't have Maxi, so it's not as many things. But I really would not be surprised if the TCG cuts Engage and drones completely, or maybe goes to like a 1-in-1 ratio.
Mhm.
But I think that
Alrighty.
covers the Justice Hunter stuff pretty well.
Yes. So now we are on to DDD. Rahan has spent the most time with and against this deck as of late. So yes, his core came in the mail today, so he's gonna give us a little bit of a rundown.
So like you can tell, like I'm actually pretty decently committed. This may or may not be the fact Pascal 6-0'd me for everyone to see, but
Shout out DB Grinder.
I, I think these cards are actually really cool. So a bit of background. When I joined the game back in 2017 as a casual, I was really impressed by like how cool DDD was in terms of like the strategic concepts required to actually pilot the deck and how like different each of the summoning mechanics were. So I was really interested from that perspective. Obviously, back then I didn't know anything about deck building, so I just took one Pendulum Domination structure deck to locals, and I got Dryden popped every single turn. So, but fast forward 8 years now, and DDD gets 9 new cards in Doom of Dimensions. And in a way, it both elevates the deck, but also makes it simpler. Because a lot of the lines now are actually much more linear than they were before. Yet it also still retains a lot of the complexity that makes DDD so unique. So the card that Aaron's sharing right now, DDD Zero Demise King Zero Machinex. This one's really cool because it has an insanely good effect when placed when activated on scale. The activation part's important because the other really broken card for DDDs is their Link 2, which I can read right now, Abyss King Gilgamesh. Because this places on scale. So a really important piece to remember is just like a card like this can activate when something places it on scale. But this is important because this can actually just circumvent Droll and Lockbird entirely. And so some of the earlier discussions I've had with friends is, this is another deck that'll just lose to like the floodgate hand traps of the format, like Droll and the Chummies and so on and so forth. But the second is actually very good into Droll. And this is primarily because of this card, but also the new spell that they're getting, which is a new Dark Contract that e-tellies something out of deck. Aaron, if you can just go over the spell card.
Yeah.
So this pops a Dark Contract or a DDD card, sorry, a DDD card you control and destroys it and special summons a DDD monster from the deck. So it allows you to get easier board presence onto the field. It allows you to clear up scale space because sometimes you get awkwardly locked in scales. And it's just like a really good card that helps push your plays through hand traps along with getting another card on the field so that you can actually just go into your Link 2. So this is a really good card. You should play it as a one of. But this is like one of 2 or 3 Dark Contracts you actually play in the deck. The other one just obviously being the Rhoda. But going back to the earlier card, the Zero King Machinex, something that's really cool is it has monster effect when it's face up in the extra monster zone. And that's when if a card is popped, or a DDD card or Dark Contract specifically, it triggers in the pendulum zone or extra face up extra deck, which is such a weird place for a card to trigger because we commonly just have never seen a card trigger over there, as far as I recall. The only one in recent memory would be like Luna Light Tiger when it gets destroyed. It triggers over there. But this is really cool because it triggers to special summon itself and a non-targeting pops a card on the field. So almost like a Kirin. And it's just really difficult to play around because it's face up in the extra monster zone. So this can be used as an extender along with another interruption piece to both break boards, but also interrupt the opponent as they play into your board as well. The other pieces that DDD got are primarily extension pieces, which is interesting because I think they always did have like a nice sufficient amount of starters. It's both Defense Soldier and the Lance Soldier. I think Lance Soldier replaces DD Lamia from those that knew of the DD cards before, so it's just like a tuner that special summons itself and level modulates to allow you to do both synchro plays but also XYZ plays. But I think DD Defense Soldier is a bit of a similar extender as well. What's really cool is actually in the extra deck, they've added several interesting pieces, primarily starting with the XZs, the DDD something Solomon. Yeah, the Wisdom King Solomon. So this is just like another searching piece for the deck. And so I know I said earlier that, Droll doesn't completely destroy this deck, but I've also already like quoted another like searching card. But this one's really cool because it allows you to like get another DDD extender or another combo piece that you need, and then just overlay into let me pull up the card. This one, Marksman King Tell. Ooh, I can't get it to focus. Okay, whatever. Summer. Okay. So Marksman King Tail is another extender, and so basically the entire concept of like the 9 support pieces is that they get ample extension with this support. So they get Wisdom King Solomon, they get the Synchro. If you can hover over the Synchro, the Synchro is a level 6, which when combined in the combo with one of the original extension pieces, which was Flame King Genghis, it gives you 2 6s on the board, which allows you to make Wave High King Caesar. In one of the earlier podcasts that we did for the Juhu season, we sort of went over how broken of a card Wave High King Caesar is, and it's actually a card that deserves to be on the ban list because of how oppressive it can be against certain decks or in certain situations. And now DDD can just like really, really easily make Wave High King Caesar when it comes to like Founder King Clovis combined with some of the older support cards. But commonly we see Wave High King Caesar be a card that's sort of brought to the field early on to play around a card like Nibiru. And it's like, okay, Rehan, like, why are we using all these different extension pieces to play into Nib only to make a card that usually counters Nib? But now DDD got its own version of K9 Ripper, which is the Link monster. So originally it had the Link 2, but now they also get a Link 3 with all 3 downward arrows, which is really cool. And this has two really good effects. One is an extra pendulum summon, which is cool because if I had a nickel every time there was a support card in the set that allows you an extra pendulum summon, I would have 2 nickels, which doesn't matter much, but like it's really cool that there's like 2 cards that allow that in this set. So this is like one of 2 cards that allow that. But the other thing is like K9 Ripper, this is also good against hand traps. So whether it be like Nibiru, whether it be a card like Izuna or like Bestials, Ragnarok can negate cards' effects in hand as well by just banishing a DDD monster and a Dark Contract from the grave. So this is a card that you also have to play around, and there's ample lines of, hey, what if I get nibbed before I make it, or what if I get nibbed after I make it, and things like that. And the DD spreadsheets that are well and widely truly available on the internet all have like ways to circumvent like a card like Nibiru now. Whereas I think previously they would suffer a bit more into it than other decks. And one of the questions that I also got is, okay, so now this is a combo deck, and combo decks nowadays have insane grind game. How's the grind game for DDD? Honestly, I don't know. I think this is like one of those decks that like just makes a board turn 1, and if it gets broken, then you kind of just don't have insane extension. But this is where this insane card comes in, which is DDDD, Great Dimension King Arc Crisis. And fun lore fact for those of you that watched, Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, this is supposed to be the counterpart for the Zark King, which is like the pendulum version or the dragon version of the protagonist's card. And this one's really cool to make because all you have to do is you have to banish cards from face up on the field or your graveyard that meet its summoning requirement, which is a Synchro, Xyz, a Fusion, and a Pendulum DD monster. So it doesn't have to be like a triple D monster. It just needs to be like Fiend monsters, which is really cool because of how easy it is to make it. So if your board actually gets cracked on the pass back, which requires your opponent to like actually commit several monsters onto the field, you just make this. This has an effect on summon to blanket negate all the cards on the field. But it synergizes really well with some of the support cards, which is the Xyz, the Wisdom King, along with the Synchro, forgot what the Synchro's Founder King, Clovis. And those allow you to inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent for Founder King Clovis. And then the Xyz allows you to do burn damage for each monster the fusion attacks over. So we basically got DDD Ultimate Conductor Tyranno in this card now.
Lovely.
And this card can attack all face-up monster your opponent controls. So really cool card and can just like reverse swipe the game. But it also makes it cool because now you can use all of your actual combo pieces to try to push into an opponent's board, try to like develop like synchro plays, Xyz plays, and then once you've actually exhausted all of your opponent's cards, then you can just go into this card and completely just OTK your opponent. Obviously easier said than done, but it's really cool about like how many different pieces of support the DDD deck got. And obviously it caught my interest. I bought a core, and I actually really look forward to playing this deck because it's an impulse deck because it can play Dominus Impulse. But also I think the lines can actually vary. So even though a card like the Link to Ragnarok was usually a choke point for Imperm or Valor or cards like that. But now you have so many different ways of circumventing a card like that, and then continue to push through with a card like Ragnarok, or Zeus Ragnarok, the Link 3, that I think this deck actually has a lot of potential for going first. It's just a matter of how well can it play going second, and how good are the lines when it comes to a card like Molcharmi Fuelos. So that is my lecture on deities.
Thanks,
Yeah,
TJ.
I think you hit pretty much all the main points of this deck. Just a few things I do want to mention is with the new card, the 0/0 Machinex, that card is searchable by Dark Spirits Mastery, which is something that I saw in one of the discords. I don't know if that card was relevant before in the DDD deck. I'm not the DDD mastered, but it seems like now with this card you have another way. You have Rotas for it, discard to search, which isn't fantastic, but it is more starters for the deck. And then also we have Nightmare Throne, which can search the Savant, which I believe is also a one card starter now. So this deck really shouldn't struggle with consistency. I think if anything, it's going to struggle with the non-engine space, and also just are these cards actually effective going second into boards, which continuous spell type effects and pendulum effects are generally pretty awful into boards. But maybe I'll be proven wrong with this deck. But I think this is going to be kind of like a tier 3, like go first combo type of deck that you're gonna lose to it when you lose a die roll sometimes. But I don't think it's gonna be like a tier 1 contender.
Yeah, we can go for some of the OCG results later, but I thought it was interesting because in the OCG, this deck took up a very small segment of the pie chart when it comes to the metagame, and it was equivalent to how much space the Crystron K9 deck took up in the OCG when that deck was brought to the forefront in its respective metagame. And obviously now, like we regard Crystron K9 as like a tier 1 threat, and it's a really successful deck overall. So I'm really interested to see whether or not like dedicated DD players can actually take this deck and actually get it like metagame results. But going back to Dark Spirit Mastery, I think that was a really good point to bring up because, like Logan said, like you have another one card starter now, but like Nightmare Throne, like Dark Spirit Mastery, they're actually not redundant pieces because they can actually search other cards as well. Like Nightmare Throne can search not only Savant Kepler, but I can also search like DD Copernicus, which is another extension piece as well. Similarly, Dark Spirit Mastery can't only search like this King Zero Machinex. It can actually also search another extension piece called Count Surveyor, which was released in Battles of Legend, and that's also a level 8 feed. So it's interesting that they do have actually these pieces that allow for both extension and starter ability as well.
I believe the Nightmare Throne can also search the other Surveyor too, right? The Scale Surveyor.
As long as there's
Let me
a
check.
monster with 0 attack or defense.
I believe so, yeah. And that card's just an extender, right?
It has to be
The
0/0.
level 8 on
Oh,
summon
0/0
searches,
has to be
the
0/0.
other one in
Okay.
hand summons itself and becomes a 4.
Okay. So it's just Savant and
Copernicus.
Copernicus, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, and I guess
Nightmare Throne
you know,
0/0.
that's a yeah. Yeah, there's some other ones, but they're pretty unplayable.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is like the first deck that I got known for on YouTube back in 2016. I love this deck. It has changed a lot over the years. It used to like be absolute dog water, where he just like made Beatrice, sent Jet Synchron, and like did some really ghetto plays. Like I tried to like Omega Loop people. And it has changed a lot over the course of time. The cards that I'm reading seem very good, but like Logan pointed out, it doesn't seem like they really fix like the going second problem. From the list that I've seen, you get to play somewhere between 12 and 16 on engine, maybe a little more towards the 16 to like 17. Obviously, Impulse is a very good card, so we'll see if like the Malice deck gets hit, if it kind of takes that spot as just like a really strong going first deck. But compared to something like Malice, where outside of Lancia, like the hand traps were very poor against it, like this deck potentially a card like Ghost Ogre is very good against the Pendulum on the scale, and obviously like Dark Contract, the Searcher is a durable. So I really like the deck. I hope it becomes playable because, like Rahan has acknowledged, like the lines are not very linear. Really interesting deck to play. Maybe not too fun to play against. I can't really speak in recent times. But yeah, I hope the deck ends up being like good. If the deck becomes like the best deck, I think it's kind of unhealthy. Like the mirror match is probably not very good. It just becomes like a pretty negate heavy deck. But when this deck is like good enough to like win at like a regional level, I think it's like a pretty interesting deck to have in the meta. So hopefully we'll see some results with it. But I think the negatives are generally going to outweigh the positives unless there's like a really noticeable shakeup on the ban list whenever that time comes. Alrighty, so I think that is it for DDD. Thank you, Professor Rahan, for your lecture. Now we're gonna get into Magnifictorm, which is the deck that my friends have been looking at. I've read a little bit as of late. Haven't played any games with it, but I just want to like acknowledge like some of like the strengths and the weaknesses of this. So we've got a bunch of monsters. We've got 3 main deck level 3s, a level 6 Crithia, which is I think one of the best cards in the archetype, and then 2 big bodies. All of them are summonable if you have oh, sorry. So the 2 big ones, if a quick play spell card is activated, you can special summon this from the hand. And then the other effect is if MST is activated while this card's in the graveyard, you can special summon this. So they're all like pretty easy to get on the board. Crithia is, what is it? A quick play spell card is activated, special summon this card from the hand. And I think the other one, the little ones, if you have Mystical Space Typhoon in your graveyard, or your opponent controls no spells or traps, you can special summon this card from your hand. So like they're all pretty able to get out of the hand. And so you're not really going to clog on it. The 2 big ones are just kind of endboard pieces. If you have MSC in your graveyard, you can negate a monster effect, and then if you have MSC in your graveyard, if a quick play spell card is activated, you can target up to 2 cards your opponent controls, shuffle them into the deck. So the Magnifictorm deck in of itself is kind of like a grindy, just kind of like build your board, kind of like a Horus deck where like you stick a bunch of bodies on board, and this one's a little more proactive where like you get to activate a quick play spell card, and like trigger their effects. Where Horus, it was like it required your opponent to interact with you. But the level 3 guys, and obviously some of the quick play spells, are going to provide you a lot more ways to be proactive. So a lot of the combos that I've seen with the deck, when it's not like a more pure deck with Magnifictorm, and generally that is combined with Runic, that is like kind of how you're going to trigger their effects as accessibly as you would like. We've got other variants. So we've got Sky Striker, which is generally going to be based around combining Magnifictorming Sight Trance. It is an activate one of the effects per turn. You can use each effect once, which I really like in card design. Not restricting a card to like only once per turn in total if it has multiple effects, which I think is neat. So this one, the first effect, draw 2 cards and discard a Magnifictorm or a quick play spell card. And if you do not discard your entire hand, so kind of that allure effect. And then the second effect, add an MST from deck or graveyard to your hand. And then if it's destroyed by the effect of MST, you can set this card. And then the additional Stanza Tribute is an add 1 level 4 or lower Magnifictorm to your hand, and then add a MST. And the last one is send from a Magnifictorm from deck to grave, and then add an MST. So all strong effects. And then the trap card, I believe, is the one that once per chain, when MST is activated, target a face-up card opponent controls negates effects. So it turns MST into a negate. Finally, after all these years, we've been able to MST negate. So yeah, the way that this deck has generally functioned is kind of combined with something else. So like I said, there's like the Runic Magnifictorming, which I assume is a little bit more control oriented. You get to just like get value off of this trap card, activating all your quick play spells. You've got a lot of big buys to get a lot of value. And then the other variant would be something like Striker, where you're only probably going to play Sight Trance. You may be playing some of the little bodies to like try and facilitate extension into like try and OTK. But the other 2 line decks that I've seen kind of as like give your deck more extension are Tri Brigade, because the Erdem, Suin, and level 6 Crithia are all Tri-Beast monsters. And there's some new Tri Brigade support in this bit we're going to get to a little bit later, which are all kind of neat. And the other one is a Big Gamanga and the Goblin Bikers, where it gives you just like a little bit more of an end board. You can do Totem Bird, you've got Bamboozling Gossip Shadow. I think I've seen some other ones. I don't remember all the specific end boards. But yeah, just 2 generic level 3 monsters. Yeah, so what have y'all seen from this deck? Give me any thoughts that you have on it initially.
So with this deck, I haven't seen a ton of actual gameplay and matches with the deck. I've seen some here and there. Like you said, I've more so seen I believe it's Trance. I've seen that card involved in a lot of different decks. One thing I saw recently, and I actually don't think we have the card pulled up here, is a Ghost Fairy Elphobia. This card is a level 3 psychic, and it's a wind, and it basically just says you can reveal a wind in your hand, and until the end of your opponent's next main phase 1, monsters with a level higher than the revealed monster cannot activate their effects. So you can just get it off of E-Telly. It's like a pseudo floodgate. It's a pseudo floodgate for like main phase, which I don't think is like fantastic, but that is something that I've seen some of the topping Magnifictorm decks do. Aside from that, this deck has a lot of like other engines and archetypes you can run in the deck, like you said, with the big Gabonga. Anything level 3 related, anything wind related is obviously playable. The Harpy cards, Featherstorm is fantastic in this deck. I believe Harpy Conductor is playable in this deck. So I think there's a lot of unique stuff you can do with these cards, but at the end of the day, I don't feel like their M board is strong enough. The cards seem fairly well positioned going second. They don't seem awful going second. You have a lot of like any deck with a lot of quick play spells is probably okay. But going first, I don't see the ceiling of this deck, and I'd like to be proven wrong on it.
Yeah, so I didn't actually read the effect of the level 6, which is my fault. It says if this card is normal special, you get to add a Magnifictorm card and or MST. So that is kind of why the deck is probably like the strongest, is you get all of it. Some of them do restrict you into wind monsters. So if you're gonna do that, you're obviously gonna probably do something more with Speedroids or with I don't what other like wind archetypes are there? Are there anything like this is more just kind of like in-house like Magnifictorm stuff? Like there isn't really too many like wind
There's like
archetypes.
Raid
Wind,
Raptors is something I've seen.
Wind Witch.
Yeah, Wind Witch, that's
Okay.
probably awful.
Yeah, so I think the effects that lock you into winds, which would be like Krathia, and I think Nagala. Yeah, so this one summon a Magnificent monster from your deck. So not like the restrictions on some of the monsters makes it a little more difficult. Like obviously, if this Krathia card was like a splashable on every type of Magnificent deck, it would probably be like really strong. But on average, I think what you're gonna have to combine it with other archetypes, and then if you're doing that, like how good is like an MST searcher in 2025? Like, I'm not super convinced that this deck has like the staying power going second. It may be like niche, like good extenders. Obviously, you may be able to like find success with it as a control deck. Runic is probably a little bit power crept at this point because of the amount of floodgates that have been hit. But if I was
And
gonna,
time
sorry,
and time rules.
oh, and time
Time
rules
Rolls true,
100%.
yeah.
So now that we have these restrictions, I'm a big fan of the Tri Brigade archetype. So if I was gonna play that deck, it's probably the direction I would lean into. Um, so we will see if the new support is able to bolster this strategy and make it better. But currently, off of reading it, I think the card design is pretty neat, but I don't think it is gonna like really impact the meta currently.
Yeah, like the only place where I've seen this archetype impact anything is like literally just bolster Sky Striker. Sky Striker had like an insane resurgence in the OCG because like now it's just like drawing cards in the draw phase and getting spells engraved, and so that's literally just like Striker's dream come true. So like that's the only space that I've seen this. Um, but it's also complete side note. Logan's like just causing buyout after buyout from the podcast. Like first it was Saryuja, now it's this card that you reveal in hand. Like it only has one printing, and like
Oh, the Elphobia?
if you heard this, like it's gone.
Yeah, oh my god, it's already $3. I had no idea.
Shout out Logan ruining the card market for the average Yu-Gi-Oh goer. So yeah, I think this deck will definitely see play at like the local level. I think it's definitely capable of going like 4 or 5-0 at your locals. At the regional level, it's probably capable of getting your invite, but I think on average, it's probably gonna be a little bit underpowered. Han, please.
This is also a Santoli deck. This will 100% see regional success with Santoli on a regional level.
He will definitely top 8 a regional with this deck. I think I have no doubt in my mind.
Randomly on the Sky Striker topic, MST also just like kind of has synergy with the Sky Striker deck, right? With the Area Zero.
I don't even think they play Area Zero anymore, but theoretically, yes.
I thought I saw some lists in the OCG playing the one MST and the one Area Zero now, which maybe is not
you have,
good,
like,
but
linkage now and like engage and horde drones. I feel like you have plenty of.
yeah, it's not 2019 anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was something I did at like Nationals 2017. I was like, yes, my MST is gonna start me off, but
let's go
if
two
that's how you
card
start off your
combo.
Sky Striker deck now by going -1, it's probably gonna be a rough day for you. Alrighty. So next is gonna be Solfachord. I've gone over this on my channel a little bit, but we're obviously on Logan's now. So please, Logan, you've done a little bit of research on this deck. Explain to us what this really does.
Yeah, so out of like the new archetypes in this set, this is the one that is the most interesting to me, and I think the cards have the highest potential. So we can start with the girl, the new one. Like I said, I think they're all
Primoria,
girls.
yeah.
The Primoria. So essentially, what this card will do is it's your Stratos. If it's normal summon or special summon, you can add a Solfachord card from your deck to your hand. And then if you link summon a Solfachord monster, you can add a Solfachord card from your graveyard or face up extra deck to your hand. So what this card reminds me of is the Lunalight card. The now I'm drawing a blank on the name. The new one.
Leo? Gold Leo?
Yeah, Leo Dancer. Yeah, it's a Stratos and it has another bonus effect. And let's look at the other girl, the the Fegia. So what this card says is its pendulum effect is when a monster effect is activated. If you control a Grand Solfachord, which is, I believe, both of the Link monsters are considered Grand Solfachord.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Link 3 is generally the one you'll have in the EMZ for this. It's basically just a monster negate. And then it has a monster effect that says if you have no monsters or all monsters you control are Solfachord monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. And then it has a whole bunch of other text after this, which, from my understanding, does not come up a lot. So during the main phase, you can special summon one Solfachord monster from your hand. Or if you tribute this card to activation, you can special summon that monster from your grave or extra deck. From what I've seen, they don't use this too often. They generally just use this card to put in the scales as a negate for itself and a negate for the Link 3. And we can go ahead and just read the Link 3 right now because it's kind of relevant here. So 2 monsters, including a pendulum. Gains 100 attack for monsters extra deck, doesn't really matter. Activate effects or pendulums, this card point 2 cannot be negated, also does not really matter. The relevant effect here says once per turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can special summon a Solfachord monster with an odd pendulum scale, which will be the Aphysia, the new one. And if you do negate the activation, then you can add one Solfachord pendulum monster with an even scale from your deck to your face-up extra deck. So essentially just an Omni negate. It's a little bit awkward when you actually play out the deck from what we've seen. You have to kind of play 2 this Aphysia card in order to get the Aphysia negate off and get the Coolio effect negate off. However, what I've seen them do to circumvent this is they're making the Herald of Mirage Light and just keeping their fairies in hand as essentially spell trap negates and then just having the Coolio effect. But let's move on to this quick place or this spell card really quick.
Card's broken.
Yeah, this card is ridiculous. So you can use each effect of this card once per turn, which is kind of the style they're going with on new cards nowadays. Discard 1 card, and if you do, add 2 Solfachord pendulum monsters with different pendulum scales from your deck to your hand. Then you can special summon Solfachord pendulum monsters from your hand up to the number of monsters your opponent controls +1. So inherently, this card is getting a boost going second. Not a huge boost, but definitely a boost. And then its other effect, as Rion kind of mentioned, you can, during your main phase, you can conduct 1 pendulum summon of a Solfachord monster in addition to your regular pendulum summon. And then it also has a third effect, which is special summon 2 Solfachord monsters from your pendulum zone, which is just like all 3 of these effects are something that the deck uses and that comes up, especially post turn 1. But really, what you're going to be doing with these cards is not so much a pure Solfachord deck. You're going to be playing these with Canine cards. Because the card in the side deck here, this Gracias, I believe is the name. The first card.
5.
Gracia. Yeah, this is a level 5, so obviously works with your canines. And this is also a Stratos for your Solfachord spells. If it's normal special summon, you can add a Solfachord spell trap from your deck to your hand. So this card obviously synergizes very, very well with the canine cards and the canine package in general. Unfortunately, the canine cards don't technically bridge into the Solfachord cards like they do with Kristron. However, as we discussed with Saryuja, you can pretty much make any canine deck bridge into whatever you want. This deck has 3 cards that would get you there. The 3 Gracia, the 3 of the new level 1, the Primoria, and the 3 of the new spell. So if you were to draw any of those off of the Saryuja, you would actually be able to have your Solfachord combo off of that. Some other neat things that this deck does is it has the ability to play Herald of the Orange Light, which sounds really good, but I'm really never sold on that card in any deck just because it's a neg 1 and you're usually getting rid of your engine. So unless your cards have a benefit when they're discarded or graveyard effects, I'm not the biggest fan of that card. Like, for example, in the Melodious deck, I always thought that card was a little bit overrated. So I'm getting like Melodious vibes with that card and with this deck in general. Other stuff this deck does is it plays Exceed the Pendulum, which on summon basically can search you a pendulum monster. And sorry, I believe it adds one from your extra deck, I believe, to Exceed the Pendulum. But some of the things that you're doing with this card or with these pendulum extra deck cards is kind of interesting because they're playing like Disablaster. You can potentially get the Disablaster to your hand. You can get the 5 Rainbow Magician, which is like a pseudo floodgate. There's a lot of options with this deck, and also with the level ones in the deck, you can end on some Blue Robin, you can end on Recital Starling and search your DD Crow. There's really just like so many different end board pieces you can do with this deck. The Herald of the Mirage Lights, and one thing we are missing in the TCG is Electromite. In the OCG, they have Electromite. However, from what I've seen in the combos, you really don't need it. It's just a kind of a bonus. The combos in the TCG are still pretty good. Your 1-card Solfachord combo or 1 card plus a discard is generally going to get you to Ripper plus a rank 5 plus a rank 1 plus a link 2 plus your Solfachord setup, which will be an Omni Negate plus a monster effect negate, which I think is like a very powerful M board. However, I don't really see the benefits of this deck over Krishan. If you're going to play the K9 package completely, I would rather my cards bridge 100% of the time. And I also just don't know how relevant these Solfachord cards are going to be playing into a board where the Krishan cards are somewhat difficult to interact with because they have graveyard effects, they get effects when they're destroyed, and they actually just like play together pretty well. Anything else you guys know about this deck that you want to add?
I went over it a little bit. I think it's neat. Like the card quality reads pretty high, and if you're comparing it to Melodius, that is a deck that also has very high card quality, but was like kind of locked into its own archetype pretty quickly between what was the Memento, not the first movement solo, that card. So it had like good cards, but the end board wasn't like super impactful just because like it was only in archetype stuff, and that stuff was like good but not like game breaking. So with something like this, where you're able to like end on an Omni Negate, a generic rank 5, Ripper obviously, and then like a card like IP or Herald of the Mirage Light, just like ending on more hard negate seems pretty strong. Obviously you have the option to play Herald of the Orange Light. Whether you choose to or not is kind of up in the air, but like just having the additional option is nice, considering a card like Gamma still add one. So I think it may have like its uses. If you want to play more of like a pure K9 deck, this may kind of make its way into it. But yeah, I think the assessment of wanting the engines to like kind of go back and forth pretty seamlessly is ideal. Like it's definitely how I would prefer to play my K9 deck if I'm gonna not play something more pure focused. So I think it's neat. Like I definitely think this deck you could lose to it 100%. I will say like this deck probably struggles on the droll. We'll see how it does in the chummies. It doesn't look at half boards too well, based off of reading the cards. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, the card quality seems pretty high. The spell seems really good. Obviously, more Stratoses are better. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out. It had some success in the OCG. It was kind of a one-off event, so we'll see if it can repeat over the course of time. But the cards read good, so we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. Small correction. Beyond the Pendulum is the card that I was thinking of. That's a card that can add a Disablaster from your deck to your hand, which is just another level 5 Pendulum that has like kind of a bonus effect. It like negates the cards that are activated in the column. So if you're playing against another Pendulum deck, I believe you put it in your Pendulum column and then will negate that column. And yeah, what's that?
It summons itself for free, I think, or no.
Yeah, and it can also summon itself for free. And yeah, you mentioned the results with this deck. So there was actually some controversy with this. So I don't know if it was the most recent, but I think it was the most popular event that it topped. People were saying that the guy was using some of his effects incorrectly, using some effects without a Grand Solfador on the field, or Solfachord. So I'm not entirely sure the truth to that, but there was an article about that. So something to keep in mind. Maybe this deck had some skewed results because of that.
Yeah, so we'll see if it's able to have any success on the TCG. Obviously no Maxi in the format, so that makes it stronger for us. It probably does well into someone like Fualos, but like it seems like Feruli is probably not that bad in the deck, so yeah, we will see. I think decent card quality, but I'm not like sold that this deck's automatically just like a contender. Like I think it's like Crestron's probably like still the better K9 plus X deck currently.
I feel like whenever we're looking at like these K9 hybrid decks, I think the bar is always Crystron K9, and it's like, why would you ever play that over Crystron K9? Like Crystron K9 is like not even that bad into a card like Fua or Droll. So I think whenever like there's discussion about like this X K9 hybrid deck, I think it should always kind of just should be considered against like Crystron.
Yeah, Solfador is sending everything to the graveyard where like now it's pretty hard to interact with your potential extender slash fault or like more plays. compared to like the Pendulum archetype, which we all already acknowledge with DDD. Definitely struggles going second. Like Detonator is still in the format to some extent. So like, how is your going second Pendulum archetype going to perform? Detonator or whatever surprise bouncing effects. Like I think it's just pretty difficult to see Pendulum succeeding in 2025 under current game design.
Sad.
So
sure.
next we have Doomsy. This is Rahan's little pet project that he's been reading over. So please, lecture number 2. Don't make it too long if you don't mind.
Okay, so lecture number 2. I actually just spent like 10 minutes before this podcast reading over these cards and learning combos, and actually not bad. I think these cards are actually really cool. Thematically, they look like Kashtira cards, and honestly, functionally, they remind me of Kashtira cards as well. I can go over them really quickly. So the point of this entire like archetype is to almost be kind of reactive and play on your opponent's turn. It doesn't have like the most expansive combos on turn 1, but it almost plays like Kashtira where it trades well into your opponent's cards. So whenever these cards are equipped on the opponent's turn, you can quick effect XZ summon an XZ, like a Doom Z monster from your extra deck with the same rank as their level. So for example, if we're talking about this one on the field, like a multi can summon a rank 4 on top of it, which is this Dicturus. And then if we look at like what the effect of this card is when this card is special summon, you can destroy one Doomsday card in your hand or face up field, and then you can destroy one monster on the field. So it's kind of like Kashtira in that sense, where like you have timed effect on the opponent's turn, where you can remove cards. Similarly with Elara, when normal special summon or when destroyed by a card effect, it can set a Doomsday, I believe, Speller Trap. Yeah, Speller Trap. And then while this card is equipped, quick effect, you can just XZ summon one Wind Machine monster from the extra deck equal to this card's level. So again, the Arcturus. And then you just attach all cards that are equipped to it to the XZ's monster. When we look at the level 8, I believe it is. I think it's the second card in the row. Up in the first main deck area.
Main deck monster, yeah. That guy.
So this card, like
the level 8, that guy.
Yeah, so this card is like Fire King Kirin, where it can target one Doomsday card you control, destroy it, and special summon this card. And then you can equip one equipped spell from the deck. So it's any equipped spell. So which is actually really cool because you can equip like the Ring card, which negates spells, which I thought was pretty cool. Along with some of the other really good spell cards in the game. And it all activates as one effect. So it's actually pretty difficult to interact with outside of a card like Impulse or Ripper. And so I thought that was neat. And then on the opponent's turn, quick effect, you can special summon one Machine XZs from your extra deck, equal to this card's rank. So the rank 8. Now when we go to the rank 8, when this card is XZ summon, it basically sucks up another face-up monster on the field. And then quick effect, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can detach the material from this card, negate the effect, and then equip one face-up monster your opponent controls to this card. It doesn't have to be the same monster that was activated, or it could be any monster or that monster. So already we can see like it's almost like Fire King or Kashtira in a way, where like with these 1-2 card plays, you're actually setting up some decent interactions that are kind of difficult to play around. But they're actually pretty good into cards like Fua or Droll. So overall, I thought like these interactions were pretty good. What's really broken is the last card, which is the Trap at the end. So if you played Rizio Malice format, you may recall a card like Mistaken Arrest. This is Mistaken Arrest, searchable. So this says target Z XZ's monster you control. Equip this card to it as an equipped card with this effect. Your opponent cannot add cards from the deck to the hand except by drawing them. So this is one-sided, basically just mistake. So I thought this was really cool. And then if you read the last card, which is like their final boss monster, it's a power patron card because this is part of the same lore as the Archmage cards. So you don't have substantial overlap. The only significant overlap that you have is with Midius the Pure, which is basically Fallen of Elbast for this entire lore series. This card is really cool. Is when this card is summoned, so you can basically just XZ summon this over a power page by using a monster you control equipped with 3 or more equipped cards. So when we went over some of the previous cards, we can already see that the XZ's monsters, when they're summoned, they also get materials equal all the materials that were equipped to the previous monster as well. So this is pretty decent to easily to summon when it comes to the rank 12 or 13, I think it was. And then it gains 3000 attack while it has an Xyz monster as material. And then you can just detach one turn from this card, especially when Doomsday monster from your grave, then you can destroy one card on the field. So it has a lot of removal options. And then if we hover over the equip spell, which is the second last card up there, this card also just destroys one of the face-up cards you control. The equip card gains attack equal to its own level or rank times 100. So when we look at the boss monster, it already has a base of I think 3500. And when it has an Xyz monster attached to it, you gain another 3000. So now you're at 6500. And then I think it's a level 12. So I think, or oops, okay, 10. So it goes to 7500. And then the equip spell allows you to attack directly as well. So I can go for game shots pretty easily. The only thing holding this archetype back is the lack of actual synergistic cards. As you can see, there's not a lot of cards for the main deck. You can't build an actual deck with this. So even though the cards are good, I think it plays well into cards like Fua and Draw and things like that. It doesn't have enough cards to stand on its own. What I've seen from the OCG and some of the combo videos that I've seen is that this deck actually combines really well with the Automat cards. Because what you can do is you can search 7 Tachyon reveal Tachyon Dragon, and then that searches the level 8, the Kirin that we went over earlier.
Oh, sure.
So it actually combines well with that. And then it also allows you to have combos where you're able to make Utopic Future and then develop board presence while playing around like a card like Nibiru. So I thought from that perspective, it's pretty cool because you actually just need to play Xyz monsters and you just Xyz on the opponent's turn. So you're able to circumvent that lock really easily. I don't think it will see much more than regional success, but I think the card quality is actually pretty decent. And then maybe with like more support in Burst Protocol, this deck could take off if it gets the right type of support. But overall, pretty cool archetype, decent deck.
Alrighty.
Is that equip spell the first equip spell that has a quick effect on it? I can't recall ever seeing an equip spell with a quick effect.
I think so.
I can't think
I
of
can
one.
check on DB.
Yeah, so
There is one other. Is the second one ever to have a quick effect.
yeah, I think
Kind of neat.
Yeah, I think it's neat. I don't think it's super viable currently. But like as we've seen with like Dogmatica and Branded and those types of just
It's
like long-standing archetypes, like this deck will probably see support for the next 3 or 4 years just randomly over the course of time. So currently not super viable, but I think the beginning stages are kind of neat. Like they're not super like the deck kind of stands alone in terms of like its mechanics. It seems kind of a little bit better going second than going first. So we'll kind of see how it develops over the next few sets as it gets more support.
Yeah, it's not enough there yet.
Yep.
Alrighty, so now we're gonna get into like the kind of generic, just like good cards from the set, and then we'll get into like some kind of a breakdown of what the OCG's done. First of all, we've got Amana Takage, which is a Onomat support card. This card is always treated as a Subaba Gaga and Dododo. And then if you control any of those monsters, well as cards in your hand or graveyard, you can special summon it, banish it when it leaves the field. And then its additional effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard, return up to 2 XYZ monsters from your graveyard to the extra deck. So a little bit of recyclability in the deck that, and like an archetype or like mechanic that generally doesn't have too much. Like obviously you have Dagusto Emerald, but that card's been kind of played out of the meta. So it's nice to have like an engine recycle when a lot of the other decks are kind of doing the same thing with like cards like Marshmallow and other stuff that can't remember off the top of my head. Like Earth Machine just like randomly has it. Like a lot of decks are just given like inherent recyclability. So having a card that is always searchable, like originally we considered playing a card like Utopic Onomatopoeia, which was just effectively just like a dead card. But this card is an extender that's just quite beneficial. So definitely nice for the archetype. We'll see if the deck's able to maintain play in the current format or post ban list, but definitely a solid card for the archetype. We've got the Dogmatica Fleur de Lis the Thunderous. Rahan, take the lead on this one because I know you really enjoy this archetype.
So this one's pretty cool. It basically allows you to. It's a hand trap that allows you to get Dogmatica Punishment out of your deck and activate it that turn. So almost like a trap trick as a hand trap. It's kind of semi-generic. The semi part being that obviously you're under the Dogmatica spell trap lock, which means you can't summon from the extra deck on the following turn. So I would see like this card being more of like card to use in like pure Dogmatica, a card like pure Mitsurugi, kind of those type of decks. But it's really cool and it's really unique in terms of what it does. But I don't have much more to add other than that.
Labyrinth?
Maybe like a labyrinth.
Let's say Labyrinth's cooking with this card. Outside of the whole impulse conflict, but it's probably still good enough. Yeah, and then the other
Is
one
there
is
another new Dogmatica? Okay, there is.
but the
Oh,
Tribal
maybe
stuff?
not. Is there? I thought there was another Dogmatica card that was coming out, but I could be wrong.
It's a mango
I-
promo.
Oh, I see.
All right, so we'll see if that ends up coming over. So then other two, we've got Tri Brigade, which Rohan, do you feel like I think you said you knew about them already?
I just thought the cards were really good. It kind of has it has the same thing of like the text that you like, and that they've been developing a lot of these cards. Like you can activate each of these effects once per turn, but only once per card. So it reduces redundancy, which is really cool. So this is cool because a card like Revolt initially was only searchable after you were already playing and when you went through your Link 2, but this allows you to get it like directly to hand. And then it also allows you to special summon a Tri Brigade Link monster from your extra deck by just basically using a Tri Brigade monster effect, but in a spell form. So you can just bring out like Shurag on the opponent's turn with this card, or going second after you've exhausted your pushes, you just bring out Shurag, which is pretty cool.
This card reads pretty good. And there's also the new Link 2 monster, which we all read and were pretty impressed by, Tri Brigade Arms Mauser. 2 Tri Beast monsters for the summon condition. If this card is Link Summon, you can send 2 Tri Brigade cards with different names from your deck and or extra to the graveyard. Obviously you can send cards like the Link 5, which will just send any generic Tri Beast if I remember correctly. You can obviously send cards like Kit and Nerval, so just really solid card. And then also the other restriction along with that is you can only summon Tri Beast. But if it is summoned using any of their effects, it's obviously already a restriction that you're locked into. And then if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one face-up monster in the field, change it to face-down defense position. So just 2 really solid effects. It's a card that you can see played off of a card like Ultimate Slayer, just as like a Book of Moon. Also, in addition, is like a solid support for this archetype. Yeah, I mean, just good card. No reason to really complain about it. We've got a new Dominus card, Dominus Spiral. If your opponent activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard this turn, you can activate this card from your hand. Target one monster your opponent controls return to the hand or extra deck. Then if you have no traps in your graveyard, your opponent can special summon one monster from their graveyard. And if you activate this card from your hand, you can activate the effects of light or dark monsters for the rest of this duel. So the light or dark restriction is going to be pretty relevant. Maybe in a deck like Magnifictorm, this card's playable. But light and dark is like kind of the backbone of Yu-Gi-Oh right now, especially in terms of like extra deck monsters, SP, and then obviously there's a lot of like the really good cards in the game are all light and dark. So I don't see too many immediate decks that can play this. Any thoughts on this one, guys?
Yeah, the only thing I really have to say about this card is the initial decks that were able to play this in the OCG were playing it as a 2/3 of, and since then they've pretty much completely cut it,
Yeah.
or cut it down to 1. I think the actual effect of the card is good, but I don't think it's on the same level as even Purge or Impulse, really. And its restriction or its activation requirement being your opponent has to activate a monster effect in the hand or graveyard is unplayable against Yami and unplayable against probably some other decks. So I don't think this card is really fantastic.
Yeah, I don't think it has this format right now, but I think the actual effect is actually pretty good. Like it's not a negate, but it's basically removal, which is where I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh is almost heading from like a gameplay perspective from turn 0. Like now you have like a card like Valon, Izuna, things like that, but now you have a Dominus card as well, which basically removes the body from the opponent's field. I just don't know where this would fit on the top of my mind. Like, but I think the effect is relevant and it'll probably have its format.
Yeah. My big issue with this card is if you don't have a trap in your graveyard, they get to replace the body with one from their graveyard. So
Mhm.
to me, this card seems like something that you would play. Like if you could play this card, you would probably play it as a one of the search off of Songs of the Dominator. That way you have a guaranteed trap. So I'm not sold that this card will ever be a 3 of in maybe any deck.
I think it's a good acknowledgement. Like it's probably like the best case scenario for it, where they don't get the value off of it, and you still get like the effect. So
Mhm.
we've got some additional archetypes getting additional support. Megalith, which is a deck that hasn't really ever seen like mainstream success. I think did a little bit online during like the COVID era, with like Drytron and some other. I think maybe even here. These cards read like okay. There's a level 12 monster that turns all of the Megalith ritual monsters into spells, so they can't be responded to. And then when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can negate the activation if you do destroy that card, and then also, if it was an effect that targeted, you contribute a monster opponent controls. So a nice end board piece for the deck, but I don't think it really contributes to like the deck being viable. And then in addition to that, we've got the Black Rose support, which we're getting, I think, onto like a character deck for sometime in the near future. So currently, none of these cards read as like super game breaking. You get a new field spell and then Violence Witch and Twilight Rose Black Knight, but none of the cards that I've read so far are like super impactful. Like when I read the Rose Black Knight cards, like Red Rose Dragon and White Rose Dragon are still the cards I think of as like the strongest. So we'll see if the new support is able to like make it super viable. Do you have any thoughts on either of these?
I don't have any thoughts on this Rose archetype yet. I haven't really gotten into the weeds with it yet. The Megalith archetype, I actually know like a little bit about this deck because I have a guy in my locals who has been soloing this deck since it came out. So at some point, I'm going to have to read these cards and learn them. But from talking with him, he thinks to seem that they help the deck a lot. However, he is a one trick with the deck, so he thinks that anytime there's a pendulum or a ritual card that comes out, so I would be cautiously optimistic about these, but they do read like fairly well for a Megalith card.
For a
When you have
Megalith
to-
card.
So
Yeah, for a Megalith
card. Because it's this archetype, it's good, and that's probably not the greatest sign. So we'll see if I'm surprised by either of these. But currently, just based off of reading, the card quality is definitely lower than some other stuff that's definitely in the meta currently. And then we read there's what's this? The Kick Deity Varafir?
Yeah, it's a very specific hand trap.
Yeah, so level 11 it looks like. When your opponent activates a monster effect on the field that targets a monster you control, or when your monster is targeted for an attack by an opponent's monster effect, or opponent's monster. Quick effect, special summon this card from your hand. Then you can reveal one card from your hand and apply the effect to the opponent's monster based on the type of card. Change it to defense position. Spell, monster change to defense position. Spell, its attack becomes doubled, and then trap banish it. So a generic hand trap, not super useful. Reminds you of a card like Juraghetto from forever ago.
Yeah, I guess its best use case would be into a card like maybe like Detonator or something going second. Like they Detonator, target your guy, you special this, reveal a monster, put it face down.
Mm-hmm.
But it's way too specific. It's just not good.
It's just defense. It's not even Book of Moon.
Oh, it changes the defense. Oh, this card's like unplayable. This card's beyond unplayable.
Get out of here.
Maybe there's a fiend deck that somehow finds a way for it, but we saw like generic hand trap. Like, oh, we're bringing up to like.
I thought this card put it face down. I was like, okay, maybe there's a use case for it, but no, this card seems completely unplayable.
So yeah, Hate Rose Witch, more of that. We've got Axon Kicker Oracle, which is
a great
new
card.
super poly target for Vanquish Soul, or against Vanquish Soul. It's a psychic
against
monster,
Vanquish, yeah.
Synchro, XYZ, or Link monster. It has an effect when your opponent with special summon a monster's quick effect, you can negate the summon if you do banish out monsters. And then if it's sent to the graveyard, banish a teleport, normal, or a quick play spell from your graveyard, special summon this card. So not a bad card in general. I think the quick effect is definitely relevant. What special is this only for inherent? Is this for will this negate Holy Sue in hand as well?
When your opponent would special summon a monster, quick effect,
right? So it can negate Holy Sue?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. I can, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this card seems really strong into Vanquish Soul. I've definitely seen Super Poly make its appearances in some OCD deck lists. I think Vanquish Soul itself was kind of playing for the mirror match at one point. So yeah, I think like the additional effect of being able to cut off Holy Sue in hand makes the deck way stronger. Like remove Holy Sue from the field, remove Ripper or whatever rock, and then say, okay, now you are gonna struggle to also put additional interrupts on the board. Obviously the trap card's still a relevant part of the end board, so it doesn't completely fix all the problems, but you're able to maybe hand trap Mad Love, cut them off from that, and then like Super Poly as well. Like you're in a pretty good position.
Yeah, one other thing too is it's not just exactly against Vanquish. You can actually use super poly Valon off the field if like just any K9 deck ends on Valon because it's a psychic. Same with Fenrir. Fenrir is also a psychic. So a couple other use cases for it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if Draco Tail ends on like because like playing Fenrir, it's a funny card that you can stick in against them. Or no fusion. Oh, it's Synchro X was your link, so it's not even working against that, unfortunately. If Fenrir
yeah, you can use a fusion. That makes sense.
That'd be nice, but unfortunately not. So seems pretty targeted towards Vanquish Soul at the moment, but just like a good super poly target. As long as that card's gonna be viable, like there's obviously like random cards that you've seen, like the Roll Chalice guy that just like 3 monsters. So it really depends on the format. Like this being in the format doesn't like make the card like super like a lot better, but giving yourself that option, especially if your extra deck is like pretty loose, it's probably like a solid like third option behind Garua and Mud Dragon. And then we've got Leviathan. Logan pointed this out because he said, I've never seen more blatant Rescue Ace support, except for that didn't say Rescue Ace on it. So tell us about this card, my friend.
Yeah, literally all this card is here to exist for is it's a way to resolve your turbulence effect. It says during the main phase, you contribute one other fire monster, then target one fire monster in your graveyard with the same original type with the lower level. Special summon and defense. And then if a face down card in your spell and trap card zone would be destroyed by the opponent's card effect, you can banish this card you control instead. So not only is it just protecting all the cards you set with turbulence, it's protecting your turbulence from Valor and Imperm. So yeah, I think this is just like probably a good card in the Rescue Ace deck. However, the Rescue Ace deck isn't really a deck anymore, so probably not relevant. This is a very unique card though that could find its way in the extra deck somewhere in the future, but right now probably not.
Yeah, Virgil Sinful Spoil ever comes back, we'll keep a lookout on this card
Yeah,
and that archetype. But yeah, that was probably like the deck that got hit the hardest by Virgil Sinful Spoil's ban. That and Fire King.
yep,
And then
100%.
last card we saw that was somewhat relevant is Miasma Necromancer. Currently, there aren't too many use cases for it that we're aware of, but it is one of the pieces required for the Shining Sarcophagus line that gets you to Dragoon. We're currently missing one more card, which is the Dark Magician Fusion, if I remember correctly, Logan.
Yeah, the Dark Magician Fusion. So I don't believe you need this card to get to the Dragoon, but this is just a card that helps facilitate it. And also just in the Dark Magician deck, I believe this card helps your one card combos. Um, So, but yeah, I've seen a lot of like the OCG. They're playing the Shining Sarcophagus stuff in the Orcus deck, and they are using this card. So there's probably something more with this that we won't have until we get that card imported. Which who knows? It's in import hell right now. We have no idea when we'll get it.
Yeah, so definitely some cards that we're looking on the lookout for, like the Dark Magician Fusion, Camilla, obviously, Spoon for Rahan over here. My man is dying looking for this Draco Tail support. He's subjecting himself to DDD in the meantime, so like Konami, please help my boy out. So yeah, that is kind of like the overview of Dude, like all like the super relevant stuff. There's also some random stuff like Goki support. I don't remember what else there is. The Goki support seems kind of cool, but it doesn't really like facilitate its ability to play with other decks. It's kind of like pretty in-house, and the Goki archetype didn't have super relevant
Yeah,
like
it's 5. It's 5 years too late.
Yeah, so I think these are most like the meta relevant cards and like the cards that you're gonna see come up over the next whatever 6 to 12 months as more support gets released. Yeah, and now we're gonna get into some discussions over how this set has released and affected the OCG in the early stages. So this is CCT 2025 Shenzhen. 800 participants, which is pretty big from what I've seen for over in China. And then this is an invite to the WCQ, so a pretty high level tournament. And this is I believe the weekend of Dude's release. And we see a lot of Yummy in the top 16. Looks like probably half, if not more, or about half. And then
Looks like
King
more.
Vanquish Soul,
Yeah.
and then we'll see a little bit more moving forward how this progressed. I'm just gonna scroll to some of the deck lists. So, how are y'all kind of anticipating Dude to like play out in the early stages for us?
I think it'll be very similar to like what we have right now. I think like our early discussion was that none of these cards introduced for Juhu decks are like game breaking. They're just like Logan said, they're like just like patching up some of the weaknesses of each of the decks. So I think the meta game, especially for us, like without a ban list, I think it'll just stay the same as is. I don't expect any of these decks to like just carry out like zooming array. But I think it just still will be like Yummy K9 VS moving forward as like the top two dogs.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think of the new stuff, I do think Yummy gets the biggest boost. The deck is already arguably the best deck, and I think fixing its issues is very, very useful in fixing some of its loose conditions. However, the deck doesn't get, it's not like a crazy jump, it's not a crazy boost, it's just better overall. And the K9 deck, well, I think some of the issues, the K9 VS deck, well, some of the issues were patched, like turning your K9 cards into Vanquish cards. That's still not going to happen a lot. It's still not that consistent. And the overall consistency issues with the Vanquish deck is always going to exist until they get another starter, which they probably never will. So I think Yummy will benefit the most from Dude.
Yeah, and as we saw, Triff won, was it Vancouver with the deck? So deck's
Yep.
already obviously shown that it's capable of. We'll see if he's able to repeat. I assume he's going to Anaheim and he's on like the points grind this year. So best of luck to him. The deck has obviously seen a lot of success over the course of the regional season. Definitely one of the top decks, if not best. Personally, not my favorite choice, but obviously it's very viable, very good, and only gets better with the new stuff. So this is the most recent tournament, if I remember correctly. Shengzhou. I don't know how. Someone please correct me if I know. 497 participants, and then again, champion and finalists are invited to WCQ 2026. 9 assists, 9 rounds of Swiss top 32 players of day 2, and then single in from there. We've got first and third place as Lunalight, and then second and fourth were Yummy, but more Yummy in the top 8. So half of the top 8 was Yummy. We've got Memento, Canine Vanquish Soul, just as Draco Tail, so obviously looking for Spoon for Rahan. And then, yeah, there's a lot of Yummy, Atlantean. I'm going to scroll through the deck list. So, Rahan, I know you enjoyed the Lunalight deck. What are your thoughts on that deck as we see some success from it? As the format kind of progress, not like just in the early stage.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I think this deck has like come up just because there's not a lot of respect given to this deck. Like Liger is a card you have to respect. Like if you don't respect it, you're just gonna lose to it because a lot of these Juhu decks and a lot of decks in general don't have great outs for it. I think the only deck in recent time, not recent, like this deck's only been out for like a couple of months, but like the only deck that I can remember that has like inherent outs to this would just be like Mitsu Orchist and like Malice. Malice probably be like the easiest of like the two outs with an engine. But like all of the Juhu decks just struggle to out a card like Liger, let alone like two Ligers. So I can see like where the success is coming from. And I think if we even like just scroll up to the Lunalight deck, it doesn't seem to be playing a lot of non-engine. Like we just relying on like cards that draw and Impulse and Eclipse. I think that's it. And they just play like heavy poly and cards like that. So I think it's actually just relying more so on engine, just pushing through fields with engine, and then dropping down a Liger to like clean things up, and just riding that to like a win.
Yeah, and as we like, if you're listening, you can't see, but the two lists are actually like kind of different. Like the first one, doesn't even main heavy poly. It's more just like some Fuas, Maxi, Chummies. Sorry, Fua, Ash, Maxi. You've got Impulse, you've got Call by the Grave. But the side deck is where you have like the heavy poly and the Book of Eclipses, and then and the second list is more what I think Rahan's identifying, where it's like 5 Chummies, Maxi, no Ash in the main deck at all. Like if you go first, you're just gonna kind of take the challenge. No, you still have Call by the Grave, but you have Impulse and you have Heavy Poly for going second. I think this deck is like a really good Lunalight matchup. Like that deck can't really beat Heavy Poly. You have like the win con of Nari trying to burn, assuming that they use all three from the extra deck. But just like if they use 2 and use 2 from hand, like if you didn't on Herald and they first action Heavy Poly, like you're probably gonna lose the game. And if they do something like Foolish Burial Goods and Black Goat to negate Herald, it's pretty easy to like kind of force out everything. So I think the deck has like a pretty strong enemy matchup. Like the deck's probably gonna have to adapt in some way, shape, or form, or it's just gonna like just continuously have a poor matchup into the deck because there isn't really a way that I'm aware of for Yummy to like out minion or out the monster when they have minion on board, right? Because that's how you get big enough, and then if they were Geki, like you're just gonna lose all of your bodies. So Logan, what are your thoughts of this?
The other important thing is also the fact that kind of like the Draco Tail problem is that Yummy's interrupts actually aren't that great into Lunalight. Like if you Book of Moon or Book of Eclipse like two bodies on the field, those bodies are still fusion material. So it's not like you're actually like stopping them the way you could stop like a K9 deck when it comes to like booking cards or like popping cards. So I think like that as well is a contributing factor when it comes to like this matchup.
Yeah, I've seen Underworld Goddess pop up in some Yummy deck lists, but I don't think that's the greatest answer because they're often going to get to 2 Ligers or get to a Liger on the follow up as well. So not the biggest fan of trying to use Goddess as an out to the Liger.
Yeah, we'll see if cards like Hydras come back into play. Obviously, like Lava Golem and Sphere Mode. Like now that you have a card like Marshmallow, you are not required to normal summon to have plays. If you have Marshmallow plus Hornet Drones plus Obedience Gold, you could potentially try and play one of those types of cards and still be able to play the game afterwards. So we'll see if those cards are popping up in the side deck somewhere. We'll see if Lunalight even play, but obviously it had success at Worlds. It's having success in the OCG. Like the deck seems to obviously be well positioned in the meta and doesn't seem to be getting any worse. And then lastly, we have...
I just had one quick thing to go over with the Yummy deck list. If you look in their extra deck, you see most of them are. This guy I think is like one of the only ones that doesn't. Check the other ones. They're mostly playing the Silvera synchro, which is just a generic level 6 synchro, and it says when it's summoned, you can book a moon, non-target book all your opponent's monsters. So obviously it's an out to Dragoon, which is kind of neat. It's like one of your only outs to Dragoon in the deck. But the reason that this card is actually good is you can go into it with Starham. Starham can revive a level 2 tuner, and then a level 1 can make it. Some other neat stuff is if your Herald of the Arclight gets impermed, a lot of people don't know that the Metal Marcher actually makes your Herald of the Arclight a tuner. I don't think anybody really pays attention to that, so you can use Herald of the Arclight and 2 level 1s to make it. And with Marshmallow, you just have more bodies in your combos naturally, so you have the ability to make this card in your opponent's turn and just completely lock them out with Cookie and Silvera very frequently.
Yeah, that's definitely a card I've seen pop up, and obviously, like if you're playing the continuous spell in your deck and you get Dark Roll, you can still try and make that play, obviously. So, card I've definitely seen pop
Sure.
up, very strong interrupt. We'll see if it translates over the TCG. And maybe I assume it's just like good, like because you kind of need a full board for that card to be relevant. So I assume it's like an anti-breaker card more than like a half board, making your board a little strong.
I mean, it's Starham plus any level 1 gets you there too, so it's
Okay.
pretty. It's not too hard.
Okay.
You definitely
So
need to be
lastly,
playing though.
yeah. So lastly, we've got just kind of like a breakdown of the OCGs. Just like I think it's a tier list, Rahan, or it's like either a tier list or it's kind of like the breakdown of like what decks have shown up to tournaments. So we've got Yummy and Vanquish Soul towards the top, but there's like almost a double representation of Yummy compared to Vanquish Soul. 96 compared to 52 decks, so 30 versus 16%. And then third, we've got Lunalight, so obviously a deck that we saw have success in this tournament, and then just perform well if in terms of representation. Like only 23 showed up, and 2 were able to make the top 8 or top 4, and 1 make it to the WCQ. And then from there, we've got more of like the TCG meta decks. We've got Malice, Draco Tail, Sky Striker, which is still solid in the format, but obviously we're missing one of the key pieces in Camille. We've got Ryzeal, which they still have at most similar power level to us. They've got 3 ice, but 1 X, 1 sword. Then obviously like a new automat support. Then in addition to that, we've got DDD, White Forest, K9 variants, and Solfachord. So, do you think this is what it looks like over here? Any like obvious changes? Do you think Yummy's more represented over here, less? Like, what are you feeling?
I think in the TCG, this is something that's pretty equivalent to like what we're seeing. I think Luna Light is just like one of those decks that you have to respect. Luna Light is basically the memento of this format. Is I think people just are not gonna respect it. They're not gonna like learn the lines, and it will blindside them. Like this past weekend, Luna Light won 2 regionals off the top of my mind. I think it won one in Germany, and then it won Birmingham regionals. The one in Germany was won by Johannes, one of the world's competitors, who obviously worked with Tom on like the Luna Light deck. So obviously like very well versed in the deck, and I think that just shows like Lunalight piloted by like a really good pilot who knows what they're doing can just like sweep the competition. So this is something that I saw when we were like initially testing for Nats. Just like the representation that Lunalight was slowly getting in the OCG. But I think now with a lot of the older decks getting phased out and cards like Bishals getting phased out, Lunalight's actually showing itself to be an actual threat, especially when it's kind of difficult to incorporate like engine specific threat into the main decks.
Yeah, I think Lunalight is going to take over or it should take over the Draco Tail role in the meta because Lunalight has the very favorable matchup against Yummy, but also just has the ability to beat Vanquish Soul way more frequently than Draco Tail can. So yeah, I think it makes sense that people are moving towards Lunalight and moving off of Draco Tail. Aside from that, I think the meta is pretty close to what we'll have. I'm sure in TCG, less players will be on Yummy and more people will be on Vanquish, just because Vanquish is kind of viewed as the higher ceiling deck, and the TCG players generally like to go towards the higher ceiling decks, higher upside decks. So I think it'll be closer to like a 20-20 split or 25-25 split. And then of course we'll have Mitsurugi, and that's something we could mention very briefly is that the OCG just got the Mitsurugi cards, and they're starting to pop up a lot over there, but it seems like they're still very experimental and they're I don't want to say behind, but I don't know if they know how to use those cards yet.
I think this is week one. Like I think
Yeah,
this
it's like
they have
literally 2 days in, I think.
like this is they just got released this week. So this upcoming weekend we'll see if there's like any impact of like Mitsurugi cards directly.
Yeah. I think it'll take a few weeks for them to, or a couple weeks for them to really settle in with those cards over there, because there's a lot you can do with those. They're going to be
Yeah, and
splashing them into
from what
everything.
I've seen on Twitter, is like kind of scrolling around, like they're testing more like reptile heavy stuff. The Ryzeal engine is obviously a little bit weaker over there because there's only 1 Ryzeal, so probably not something that they're as confident in doing. Yeah, we'll see how they end up playing it. Mitsurugi, I think, is still very strong archetype, and for them, they're not going to be super concerned with it getting hit in the near future. So they can take their time and kind of try stuff out and see how it plans out. Like I've been playing the deck a fair bit as of late. I think it is a fantastic Yummy matchup. So we'll see if they're able to translate it into Vanquish Soul and Lunalight and the rest of their meta. Alrighty, any final thoughts on the podcast, gentlemen, before we head out?
No, I think we covered everything as well as we could for now.
Yeah, I think
Alrighty.
Dude is
Yep.
continue like taking the format in a really fun and like healthy direction. And it's really promising to see, like, even without a ban list, like just how much fun this format is. And if we get a ban list before Anaheim, it'll be really interesting to see like how that shapes up the format for Anaheim.
Honestly, just ban Paradise Smasher. I'm kind of chill with everything else.
Same.
Alrighty. So thanks for joining for On the Bubble, and we'll see you next time.